It is time to get my tomatoes and peppers transplanted up into some bigger pots, so that's what I'm going to show you in today's video. Stick around. Hey guys, welcome back to another Slightly Rednecked video. Again, my name is Chris. If you're not familiar with this channel, I help you to produce your own meat, eggs, and vegetables from your backyard, your balcony, your deck, your garage, or heck, even a spare room in your house if that's the way you want to do it. And today I'm going to be repotting some plants. I've got some tomato plants here, some pepper plants way up there towards the front, and this is all basil right here in the middle. All this stuff over here is just a jungle of house plants because it's too cold to put them outside right now. So they're just all kind of stationed here on the dining room table for right now, but that's okay. If you guys have been following my series, my Seed to Harvest series, these are my warm season crops. I did cool season crops, several, a month or so ago, showed how to transplant those up. It's going to be very, very similar to that, but there are a couple of special things that you do specifically with tomato plants. So I wanted to shoot this video and show you kind of how to do that. First things first, when you're transplanting tomatoes, this is April 15th right now. Today is our average last frost date, but honestly, it snowed outside today, so it may be a long time before we get warm weather yet. It's kind of late for us to get snow, but anyway, it is what it is. My point is, it's going to be several weeks. Today's our average last frost date. I always wait at least 3, maybe 4 weeks after that. I don't really plant my warm season crops out into the garden until like the second week of May. Make sure all the danger of frost is past. These tomatoes and peppers especially, they love the heat. They do not do well in cold weather. So even though we're not getting frosts, if the lows or if the highs are only in the 50s during the day, they're just not going to do well. So I want to wait till we get past all of that. Make sure we're well past that before I plant them out. So I'm going to plant these up into a fairly good sized container because they're going to have another 2-3 weeks probably before they go in the ground, and tomatoes grow pretty quick. They're going to get pretty big, so I want to make sure they have lots of room to expand their roots and all that kind of stuff. So I'm going to use a pretty good sized pot, and these are reused pots. I don't know what was in this originally, but I just saved them and I use them again for other things. So let me get my stuff situated here, and then we'll get going on this because there are a couple other considerations. All right, where's my dirt? All right, so this is my potting soil that I'm going to use. And you do, now again, when we've started the seeds, we've started them in a sterile seed starting mix, which is mostly peat moss, vermiculite. There's not really any nutrients in that. But now when we're transplanting these out, these guys are about 10 days old, maybe a little bit over. I'm going to transplant them out into a potting soil. And this is a mix. This is an organic one. You don't have to use organic, but it was the same price as the others, so I did. It's just basically a mix of compost, peat moss, and vermiculite. If you get some of the other ones, they're going to have fertilizers added into them, and if you want to use those, that's fine too. You just need something to kind of feed the plants. I usually find that just a standard compost, peat moss, vermiculite mix works pretty well. The vermiculite or the perlite, it's basically the same thing. It's going to kind of help with the water retention. The peat moss kind of makes it airy, keeps it from getting too compact, and the compost is what feeds it. This also has worm castings added in for feed, so that's going to feed my plants out. These aren't going to stay in here but for about 3-4 weeks, so it's not really that big of a concern what kind of potting soil you use. If you were going to use something, if you were going to plant these out into a container permanently, you would want to add some kind of some other feeds to that, or plan on feeding the plants with a fertilizer, as they grow. So let me get, I got just the last of this compost in this bag out of here into this pot, and then we'll pick up on actually putting the tomato in the pot, how you're going to go about that. I've let these kind of dry out just a little bit. So they're pretty dry. You can see they're a little wilty, but as soon as I water them, they'll perk right back up. I did that on purpose because it really helps hold this together whenever I pull them out. Makes it easier to get them out to transplant. So what I've done is I've just put a little bit of potting soil, maybe halfway in there, to plant this tomato plant into this pot. Now I want to plant tomatoes really deep. So you've got these 2 sets of leaves down here were the first kind of leaves that came out. I'm going to go ahead and pinch those off, and I'm going to plant at least that deep in the container. What that's going to do is that means all this stem down here that's below the dirt will grow roots. I could plant it all the way up to here if I wanted to. All that below there is going to grow roots. That's going to give it a really strong, good root base. So I'm going to plant it just about as deep as I can. So I'm going to make a hole down here in the bottom of my pot, and I'm going to stick that tomato down in there, and then I'm going to go ahead and just backfill it with the potting soil. So again, I want it at least as deep as those first, just about as deep as I can get it in this pot. Now what I'm probably going to have to do is go in and water this in just a little bit and then add some more potting soil to the top of this container. But that's pretty much it for planting my tomatoes in. What I'll do is I'll water them from the top once to make sure all this stuff settles down, and then from that point on I'll just sub-water them. Same way I do, in these trays, something like this. Fill the tray up about that deep with water. Let them all absorb as much water as they will in about half an hour, and then I dump it off whenever I go to water them. But the first time I'll go ahead and water them from the top to make sure all this stuff settles, backfill any kind of soil that I need to. But that's pretty much it. I'm going to, like I said, plant that about as deep as I can get that in that pot. And you can see the difference in here where the soil level was before on these tomatoes versus where it is now. Now these are going to perk up and they're going to grow probably pretty good size before I ever get them out into the ground. All right, don't forget to label your pots, because as soon as I get I've got several different types of tomatoes going over here, and as soon as I get them all potted out, I'm not going to remember which one's which. So I need to put a label on these. These are Amish paste tomatoes. So I just put an AP on there, piece of tape, and then I'll stick that on the side of the container, and we should be good to go. Okay, one more thing I want to show you about tomatoes here. Let me get some dirt in this pot so I have somewhere to put it. And this one here. Sometimes you'll get where maybe you got 2 seeds in there and you get 2 tomatoes that sprouted, and you can pinch that off when it's young. Just take the strongest one, let it continue to grow. But tomatoes are fairly hardy, so a lot of times what you can do is you just kind of break up this root wad a little bit and just be gentle with it. Try not to bust everything up, and you can kind of tease one of these out of there and just take your time. And there we go. So we can get 2 separate tomatoes out of there. And that should go ahead. There's enough roots there that it should go ahead and sprout. And again, we're going to bury it pretty deep, so it will develop its more roots. And you'll end up getting 2 tomatoes out of here. And there we go. All right, moving on. I think that's all the tomato plants here. Now we're going to move on to doing peppers and basil, and they're both going to pretty much go the same way. I'm not going to use anywhere near as big of a pot. I'm going to use these little cups that I've got here with holes drilled in the bottom of them. These are going to be plenty big enough for my basil. Basil's not going to get that big before it's time for them to be planted out. So again, just a little bit of dirt in the bottom. Let me get it going here. Pop my basil out of here. Now you could do the same thing with these and tease them apart, because I've got multiple basil growing in each one, but honestly I don't need that much basil. Another thing that I've found too that works really well is, I'm going to go ahead and pinch these off and pull them out real quick, if I can. There we go. Is that if you stick these in water, basil will actually root out, and you can just stick it in a glass of water, put it in a sunny window, and it will root out, and you'll have another basil plant right there. I don't need that much basil, so I'm just going to put this stuff to the side and maybe throw it in a salad or something later. Now this stuff I don't want to plant real deep. I only want to plant it about the level that the soil is now. So I don't, it's not like a tomato. It's not going to grow roots out all along the stem. It will, chances are if you bury it real deep, then it will rot out. So you don't want to bury it that deep. Just keep it about the same level that it was in the other pot. Pepper's going to work the same way. I'm going to put them in, I might go with a slightly bigger cup than this. I've got some solo cups, just standard red, 20-ounce cups are about that big, maybe a little taller than that. I'll probably put peppers in those because they do tend to get just a little bit bigger, but they don't need nearly as much room as the tomatoes do. They won't get nearly as big by the time they go out into the ground. So anyway, got a whole lot of basil, a whole lot of peppers to go ahead and get planted out, so I'm going to go ahead and do that, and then we'll come back and we'll get this video closed out. Alright, so I got everything potted out. I got it all under the lights here, and this isn't everything. Some of it's in the back room on a shelf under the lights, all the basil's in there. But most of my peppers and tomatoes are all out under here. I had to kind of set up a table with a little PVC stand I built to hang some lights on because I don't have enough room on the shelves back there to get all this stuff. But anyway, this all the tomato plants, all the pepper plants here, got them all watered. Tomatoes are starting to perk up a little bit, still looking a little bit droopy though right now, but that's okay, they'll recover just fine. And that's really about all there is to it. We're just going to leave them under the lights, you know, at least 12 hours a day, 24 hours a day if you want to, but at least 12 hours a day of light, and get the light just as close to them as you can, just like we've talked about in the previous videos. And here in about, I don't know, as soon as the weather warms up here in a couple of weeks, week and a half or so, I'll start hardening them off, and then I'll be able to just put them outside during the day. And then probably about 4 or 5 weeks from now, roughly, when the weather turns nice, past all our threats of frost and all that, I'll be able to plant those out to the garden. Now, this is part of my Seed to Harvest series I'm doing this season. I'm going to follow these plants all the way through to harvesting at the end of the season. So if you guys are new to gardening, keep up with my videos. I'll make sure that you have a great gardening season this year. Thank you guys so much for watching this video, and as always, God bless.